DCI Jonah Porter was afraid. As the aircraft taxied towards the runway, and the cabin crew went through the safety announcements, he felt the muscles in his neck tightening, and his pulse racing. Yes, he was afraid. Not of flying, that would have been absurd. Jonah knew the statistics. He was safer flying to Portugal than crossing the street in Oxford. No, his fear was of something completely different. He was afraid that the hire car that they had so carefully booked might not, after all, be able to accommodate his state-of-the-art electric wheelchair, which was the key to his independence. He was afraid that the supposedly accessible apartment might lack the facilities that he needed, or that it might be awkward for his carers to help him with washing and dressing and all the other things that able-bodied people did without even thinking about them. Above all, he was afraid that his presence would spoil the enjoyment of the holiday for his friends, and in particular for 16-year-old Lucy, in whose honour it was taking place. He felt a pressure on the fingers of his left hand, and looked down to see that Lucy, who was sitting next to him, had reached out her right arm and taken hold of his first 2 fingers. She squeezed them gently. Ever since a bullet in the back of his neck had paralysed him 7 years previously, these fingers and his left thumb were the only parts of Jonah's body below his shoulders in which he had any sensation. He turned his head to look at Lucy, and forced a smile. "You're not nervous of flying, are you?" she asked. "I thought you'd been all over the world when your kids were young." "No," he assured her, "it's not the flying that makes me nervous. I just feel very strange without my chair. It's only for 3 hours. I know. I realise I'm being stupid. It just makes me feel so helpless. I rely on it so much for everything." "I know. You'll just have to put up with relying on us instead for a while." "That's right." Lucy's mother, Bernadette, always known as Bernie, or, in recognition of her Liverpudlian origins, our Bernie, chipped in from the seat on the other side of him. "And mind you ask if you need anything. I don't want to find that you've made a martyr of yourself because you don't want to be any trouble. And we don't expect any fuss from you when it's time for us to give you your physio to keep your circulation going and stop you getting pressure sores," her husband Peter added from the row behind. Okay, Jonah grumbled, feeling just a little less tense as he joined in the familiar banter. "I'll be a good boy and do as I'm told." "We'll have lunch as soon as the seatbelt lights go off," Bernie suggested. "That will keep you occupied for a while, and we'll be in Faro before you know it." "And just tell me if you want to listen to that audiobook you brought," Lucy added, "and I'll put your headphones on." "Thanks, Lucy. Later, maybe, after lunch." Jonah knew that he ought to be grateful for Lucy's attention, and he did recognise how much he relied on her and her parents to get him through ordinary day-to-day life. But he sometimes wished that she did not appear to enjoy caring for him so much. He occasionally wondered whether, if some miracle cure were to give him back the use of his arms and legs, she would miss having him dependent on her, like those mothers who regretted that their children were no longer babies. She was justly proud of the skills that she had acquired through 7 years of helping his adult carers, and clearly took delight in being responsible for his welfare. But surely teenage rebellion should have kicked in by now, and she should be starting to resent the amount of time that was taken up with activities of daily living that other people took for granted. The head steward announced that passengers were now permitted to leave their seats, and Bernie got up to reach down a rucksack from the overhead lockers. She took out packets of sandwiches and handed them to Peter and Lucy. Then she turned to Jonah. "Feeding time. Any preferences between me and Lucy?"